My name is Clara Jennings, and the last thing my brother ever said about me loud enough for a whole room to hear was this: she's the failure. Every family has one. He didn't whisper it. He didn't hesitate. He didn't even look at me. People laughed. Some nodded. No one stepped in. And for one brutal, suspended moment, I realized something I'd spent years trying not to believe in their eyes. I wasn't a person. I was a disappointment they felt comfortable displaying. That was the crack, the quiet, devastating one that never fully healed, because they had no idea who they were calling a failure. But they were about to. I hadn't set foot on my brother's base in 6 years, and the only reason I was there now was because my mother had called me 3 times in a single morning. Each call carried the same message wrapped in different tones: that everyone in the family would be present, and that my absence would make us look ridiculous. Her voice sounded squeezed between irritation and desperation, clarifying that I was being summoned for image, not affection. By the time I reached the entrance of the main hall, a cold pressure settled across my chest. Inside, harsh white lights washed over polished floors as conversations hummed beneath them. Groups of soldiers stood in uniform clusters, all crisp lines and controlled voices. Their discipline made me feel like an accidental intrusion, something out of tune with the world they inhabited. The moment I stepped inside, a sharp laugh cut through the noise. My brother's. He pointed at me openly, like he was presenting some cautionary exhibit. She's the failure. Every family has one. Heads turned, eyes landed. The expressions were all the same: pity dressed as amusement. Amusement tinged with superiority. No one hid it. No one tried to soften it. They had accepted the version of me they'd been fed for years. I didn't answer. Silence was the only shield I trusted. Thin but steady. None of them knew where I'd been or what I'd done these past 6 years. He kept smiling as he added, "Everyone knows she never figured out her life." That was when I felt it, something shifting beneath the surface. Something coming. If my family were asked to describe my younger years, they would recite the same rehearsed narrative they'd carried for years. I was the one who didn't try, the source of their tired sighs and quiet embarrassment. Between 18 and 21, my life looked through their eyes like an endless carousel of failures. I moved through more than 10 jobs: cashier, fast food server, office assistant dismissed after 3 weeks for spilling coffee on an executive's desk. My brother memorized each slip-up and sharpened them into proof that I would never get anywhere. But the truth beneath their stories was heavier than any of them bothered to understand. I didn't walk away from those jobs because I lacked discipline. I walked away because those years felt like suffocating under something that wouldn't lift. Depression pushed down on me like a slab of concrete I couldn't shift, while every glance inside our house reminded me how unfavorably I measured against my brother. Success clung to him naturally. To me, it felt like a door that locked itself whenever I reached for it. They saw inconsistency. They never saw the nights I stayed awake because the thought of standing felt impossible. They never saw how each morning felt like dragging myself out of a void. They never saw how hard I fought just to survive a day. And then, at 21, something happened that none of them could have imagined. I enrolled in a volunteer data analysis course, part desperation, part instinct to escape the feeling of being trapped. Someone there noticed me, not with pity, but with interest. A federal organization reached out quietly, discreetly. Their message was simple: they wanted to talk. That invitation cracked open a door to a world my family didn't even know existed. Then came the night that changed everything. My family assumed I'd gone out to waste money again. Instead, a black SUV with no plates pulled up just before midnight. The driver didn't offer small talk. He simply handed me a blindfold and asked me to turn off my phone. My pulse raced, not from fear, but from the realization that I was finally stepping into a life that didn't rely on my past as a reference point. I left without saying goodbye, not because I didn't want to, but because I wasn't allowed, and because I already knew none of them would have believed where I was going. To them, I disappeared again. In reality, I stepped into a world that finally saw me for what I could do. Those 6 years weren't an escape. They were a life built around encrypted calls at 2 in the morning, files routed through channels that didn't officially exist, and long corridors where the lights never turned fully on because those who walked them weren't meant to be recognized. My days were shaped by tasks that required precision and silence. My worth was measured by clarity, speed, accuracy, not by anyone's expectations of who I should be. I signed a confidentiality agreement in a freezing room where the air felt sharp enough to sting. The fear didn't come from the cold, but from the realization that I had no idea what they were preparing me for. All they said was that I had a skill they needed, and they would guide me accordingly. Strangely, that uncertainty steadied me. For the first time, I wasn't defined by failure. During one high-risk assignment, I met the man who would one day break my brother's certainty about who I was. Commander, though he wasn't in uniform, then oversaw a mission that would never appear on any public record. His team was cornered, every exit cut off. My analysis, delivered in less than 4 minutes, opened a route no one else saw. To me, it was just the job. To him, it was survival. From that moment, he treated me with a respect no one in my family had ever given me. Months later, after a grueling briefing, he told me quietly, "You'll never be named in any report, but the people who need to know will know." I didn't grasp the weight of his words then, not until the night my brother mocked me in front of his entire unit. To him, I was still a disappointment. He had no idea that men in rooms he'd never enter trusted me with their lives. I didn't return to flaunt anything. I need fried things. I came because my mother asked, and because silence had always felt right. But when Commander walked into that hall, I realized something undeniable. The truth wasn't going to stay buried any longer. The reception after the review filled a high-ceilinged hall glowing under warm lights that made every metal gleam like tiny sparks. Glasses clinked, boots struck the floor in steady patterns, and laughter rolled across the room as if everyone there shared the same language of pride. I stayed near a column, an observer in a world my family never believed I belonged to. My brother thrived at the center of it all. Crisp uniform, loud confidence, moving from group to group as though the celebration existed for him alone. When he pulled several officers closer and adopted that familiar storytelling tone, I already knew what was coming. For years, he'd kept his library of my worst moments polished for entertainment, using them to reinforce the idea that he was the one who got everything right. "You know what she did once," he said as I approached. Dropped a whole bucket of white paint on her boss's car, fired on the spot. The group burst into laughter. My mother looked down, a flicker of discomfort crossing her face before fading into silence. A young officer beside him gave me a polite smile that didn't match his condescending question. "You still doing those little part-time jobs?" Before I could respond, my brother cut in. "She's not doing anything now. She's between life phases." The teasing tone triggered another round of laughter. I forced a small smile. If they knew the truth behind those phases, not a single one of them would laugh. Then I caught the eyes of a younger man behind the group. No mockery, only recognition. When our gazes met, he turned away sharply. His face was too familiar, too dangerous. A second later, I heard his whispered slip. "I think I saw her in D.C." But that file wasn't supposed to show faces. His companion kicked him under the table. My mother touched my shoulder. But my brother only scoffed. "Mom, don't defend her. She knows what she is." Before the sting of that could settle, the main doors opened. A soldier straightened, then another, then the entire row. Only a few people in the military could command silence without speaking. And I knew exactly who had arrived. The hall shifted instantly into rigid order. Laughter died, drinks were set down, and the energy tightened like a wire pulled too far. Commander entered with the quiet authority of someone who didn't need introduction. His gaze swept the room not with politeness, but with calculation processing, assessing, remembering. My brother straightened, convinced Commander had come for men like him. I stayed still, hoping and knowing it was useless to hope that he wouldn't notice me. He walked past the group. My brother inhaled, ready to greet him. Commander didn't look at him. His eyes found mine. The room thickened, the air heavy enough to silence even breathing. This wasn't recognition, it was memory. The kind earned in a place no one in this room had clearance to imagine. A lieutenant behind him paled, understanding exactly what that look meant and exactly how few people ever received it. Commander gave me a small nod, subtle yet powerful, a form of acknowledgement no rank could imitate. The officer who'd whispered earlier froze. No way. She's really— He didn't finish. My brother stared at me, his certainty collapsing in real time. Commander stepped toward me. No one moved. No one dared interrupt the truth rising between us. I lifted my chin not for him, but because the life I had kept buried was no longer something that silence could protect. Silence fell so suddenly it felt unnatural, as if the entire hall had been muted at once. Every conversation died mid-sentence. Even the soldiers by the walls straightened instinctively. Commander stopped a few steps in front of me, close enough that I could feel the weight of his presence. My brother stood rigid beside his friends, chest lifted, ready to receive the attention he believed was coming. But Commander didn't look at him. He looked at me steady, deliberate, recognizing. It wasn't the polite acknowledgement reserved for guests, and not the casual glance given to a relative of a soldier. It was the look of someone who had once trusted me to keep 6 men alive in a room where the walls never saw daylight. My breath tightened. I felt the moment closing in around me, like a door I couldn't stop from locking. Commander straightened, lifted his chin, and raised his hand in a sharp and flawless salute. He saluted first. The entire room froze. Behind me, a glass shattered on the floor, the sound slicing through the silence. Someone whispered, "What the hell?" before being yanked back. My mother covered her mouth. My brother stumbled a half step, color draining from his face. I returned the salute, slow and controlled, every muscle tense. I had done this once before, in a sealed conference room. When Commander told me no one present outranked what I'd done, but doing it here, before people who thought they knew me, felt heavier than anything I'd carried. A colonel behind him snapped into a salute as well, 2 high-ranking officers honoring someone they weren't allowed to name. A soldier whispered, terrified, "Only 06 and above ever get saluted first." Commander lowered his hand. "Ma'am, it's truly an honor to see you again." The words sliced through the room. My brother's expression collapsed, unable to place the sister he mocked into the reality unfolding in front of him. I didn't move. I let the truth scorch every illusion they'd built. No one approached me. No one spoke above a whisper. Some soldiers stepped back, instinctively lowering themselves as if standing higher near me might break protocol. Commander studied me, calculating what could be said without breaching secrecy. My brother's voice cracked. "Why did you salute her? She's my sister. She's not military." Commander's reply cut through the air. "She saved my team, 6 men, and she did it while you were still in basic training." The hall trembled. My hands went cold. That mission didn't belong in a room like this. A captain asked, "Sir, is she cleared for public recognition?" "No. And that's why this will not be discussed again." Everyone understood I wasn't just important, I was restricted. A soldier murmured. The report used a code name, not a real one. His eyes widened when they met mine. My mother whispered to my brother, "You called her a failure." He couldn't speak. Commander placed a hand on my shoulder. "Ma'am, if you need more said," I shook my head. "That's enough." The room shifted, mockery replaced by caution, arrogance by respect, and my brother finally realized he had never truly known me at all. The hall twisted into an entirely different shape after Commander spoke, as if the lights dimmed, the air thickened, and every sound folded into a single heavy silence. Minutes earlier, the room pulsed with laughter and loud stories, the kind of energy only soldiers after a long ceremony could create. Now, it felt like the world had stopped breathing. My brother froze first. The confidence he always wore, the easy grin, the proud posture cracked clean down the middle. His eyes lost their focus, widening as if he'd been dropped into a reality he didn't recognize. For the first time, he was looking at me without the filter he had built his whole life. Dozens of soldiers stood still, their stares shifting from curiosity to caution, then to something close to fear. They didn't know what I was, what rank I held, or why Commander had recognized me. They only knew one thing: a man who outranked nearly everyone in the building had saluted me first. And that single gesture shattered their assumptions far more brutally than any explanation could. A young officer stepped forward, hesitated, then forced himself to stand at attention. When my eyes met his, he dipped his head, slightly silent regret, replacing the laughter he'd joined moments ago, across the room. My mother gripped her purse, eyes trembling with confusion and something painfully close to remorse. She watched me like someone realizing they had misread their own child for years. I turned away before my brother found his voice again. I didn't want to see the moment he understood the truth. As I walked out, the cold night air met me, sharp and sobering. In that chill, I knew there was no going back. I stood alone in the long hallway, my palm resting on the cold metal railing, still damp from the night air. The golden light spilling from the hall behind me cast my faint reflection onto the glass, a blurred outline against the darkness outside. The room I'd just left had quieted into a strained murmur, every conversation muted, every voice held back by the weight of a salute no one knew how to process. No one dared mention me now, not because I was threatening, but because they were terrified of saying the wrong thing about something far beyond their understanding. Footsteps approached, slow and uneven. I didn't have to turn to know who they belonged to. Some silences were tied to one person alone. He stopped a few feet behind me, as if the space between us was the last fragile shield protecting him from a reality he wasn't ready to face. His voice cracked immediately when he spoke. Who? Who are you? It wasn't anger. It was disbelief, the sound of someone watching his world collapse in a matter of minutes. I'm still me, I said quietly. You just never looked past what you wanted to believe. He swallowed hard, shoulders tightening as though carrying a weight he didn't know how to bear. Commander saluted you. You saved his team. What did you do for 6 years? Things you're not cleared to know. I said it gently, not as a wall but as the truth. He stepped closer, the bravado he always carried slipping away. Why didn't you tell us? Why did you let everyone think because they wanted to think it? I answered, and because I couldn't tell the truth. Not then. Not now. His head bowed. The tremor in his shoulders wasn't embarrassment, it was a quiet breaking, the kind that comes when someone finally sees the damage they caused without ever meaning to. I'm sorry, he whispered. You never owed me anything. I held his gaze for a long moment, then shook my head gently. I don't need your apology. I just need you to stop deciding who you think I am. A gust of wind swept through the hall, rustling the leaves outside. He didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. For the first time, he simply listened. I walked away without looking back. I didn't need to. I could feel his eyes following not with judgment, but with the painful realization that for years, he never truly saw me at all. I stepped out of the hall as the whispers behind me thinned into a distant echo, fading like a sound carried off by wind. The cold night air of the base wrapped around my skin, sharp enough to steady every breath. My footsteps tapped against the concrete in quiet, measured beats, each one releasing what still clung to me from the room I'd just left. Above, the American flag snapped hard in the wind, its shadow sweeping across the ground in steady, rhythmic waves. Commander stood a short distance away, still as stone, a silhouette carved out of confidence and calm. He didn't call out or move toward me. He simply waited like someone who understood that presence can speak louder than comfort. When I reached him, he offered nothing more than a firm, respectful nod. Thank you, I said softly. He pressed a hand over the medals on his chest, his expression steady but not cold. Ma'am, some debts can never be repaid. Tonight, at least, they saw what I've known for years. There was no embellishment in his tone, just truth, simple and heavy. I lowered my head slightly, not in protocol, but in gratitude. Gratitude for the rare kind of understanding that doesn't demand explanations or proof. When I turned away, I saw my brother standing near the door of the hall. He didn't approach. He didn't look away. He stood still, the weight of everything he had just learned settling into his shoulders. The arrogance he carried so effortlessly was gone. His eyes held something softer, something I had never seen from him: recognition. I didn't expect an apology. I didn't need one. What existed in that moment between us wasn't forgiveness or resolution. It was the first crack in the wall he'd spent a lifetime building. A beginning. Nothing more. But enough. I walked toward the parking lot, the night air threading through the rows of trees, carrying the lingering echo of Commander's salute. As I crossed the open concrete, a truth settled into place inside me, quiet, firm, undeniable. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need the world to know what I had done. I just needed to know that the truth, my truth, was finally allowed to breathe. Respect doesn't have to be loud, I murmured to myself, opening the car door. It just has to be real. The door closed behind me with a soft thud, cutting off the noise, the doubt, and the years of misunderstanding. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was peace,